how Enzo Maresca played Reece James to solve the team's leadership issue, Chelsea's man-to-man pressing throughout the match, and how Newcastle United responded to it. I tried to explain this in this section. Welcome to Offensive 6 channel. Today, I'll try to provide a tactical analysis of the Chelsea and Newcastle United match. If you've got your coffee ready, let's start with the lineups. On the Chelsea side, there was a surprising change from last week's starting 11, with only one player swapped. Enzo Maresca opted for Neto on the left wing this week, replacing Sancho, who couldn't meet his expectations in the previous match. However, the real surprise was the absence of Cucurella at left back, despite his suspension ending. Instead, Enzo Maresca chose Reece James for the left back position. The reason behind preferring Reece James lies in the statements Maresca made earlier this week. I must admit we have a leadership issue within the team. That's why I expect much more from Reece James, both on and off the field. A player doesn't become a captain because he fights hard. He fights hard because he is a captain. It was precisely for these reasons that he wanted a leader on the field, so he chose Reece James for this match. Another surprising choice was Romeo Lavia in the number 8 position. Last week, he didn't play Enzo Fernandez against Liverpool because after the international break, South American players often face long flights and can be fatigued. However, it turned out this wasn't the only reason. On the Newcastle side, there were 2 changes from last week's starting 11. Almiron replaced Anthony Gordon, who was withdrawn due to a last-minute injury, while Harvey Barnes started in place of Murphy. This 3-point win was very valuable for Chelsea as it kept them in the title race. Newcastle, however, found themselves in 12th place with this result, extending their winless streak to 5 games. Newcastle is indeed one of the league's strongest teams, both physically and in terms of tempo. They are above the league average. However, especially this season, their struggles in finishing have prevented them from stopping this poor run. When we look at the XG values in this match, this becomes evident. Chelsea generated 1.61 XG, while Newcastle produced 1.81 XG. Yet, as we've seen often this season, Newcastle has struggled to convert their XG into goals. As I mentioned in my pre-match analysis video, I expected both teams to press high, leading to a match with plenty of chances. This wasn't hard to predict, as both teams have employed high man-to-man pressing in every match so far. However, their pressing methods were different. Before we examine that, let's look at how each team positioned themselves on the field. When Chelsea had possession, as we've come to expect, Maresca used Gusto either as an inverted fullback or pushed him forward as one of the attacking 4. In this match, we saw Gusto positioned as part of the front 4 more frequently, so when Chelsea had the ball, they lined up in a 3-2-4-1 shape. Maresca maintained the 3+2 structure in build-up play in this match as well. Another important point was Palmer's role. While Maresca typically uses Palmer in certain areas of play, he chose to play him on the left interior this week. If we arrange Chelsea according to their average positions, we can see that Palmer was positioned on the left interior side. We can also clearly see how Gusto was positioned higher up. Another player I want to highlight is Jackson. Aside from scoring a goal, his play was truly impressive, particularly his link-up play. Looking at his average position, he played more like a midfielder than a forward. These are the touch points for Jackson during his 78 minutes on the field. Throughout the match, Jackson touched the ball 22 times, with half of those touches, or 11, coming in his own half. Achieving this is really not easy, especially for a striker. So, how did Newcastle line up when they had possession? As you can see from the tactical board, when Newcastle had the ball, they were positioned in a 4-1-5 formation. The 4+1 in the back was stable, while the front 5 were constantly mobile. Sometimes Joelinton would move to the wing, while at other times Barnes would. The main player responsible for initiating attacks from the back, as in other Newcastle matches, was Bruno Guimaraes. He was the player with the most touches for his team, with 78, and won 7 out of 10 duels, the highest for his team. It's safe to say Bruno Guimaraes had a good game. Now, let's look at Chelsea's pressing tactic. I noticed that when Chelsea pressed high, they left Newcastle's right-back Livramento unmarked. I thought about why Enzo Maresca chose this pressing method, and it became clear that it neutralized Newcastle's most important weapon. There were two reasons for this choice. First, Anthony Gordon's last-minute injury not only affected Newcastle's game plan, but also changed Chelsea's approach. If Anthony Gordon had played, Maresca probably wouldn't have chosen this press. The second reason was that Newcastle's left wing was much more effective than their right wing. The first reason essentially leads to the second. If Anthony Gordon were on the field, both Newcastle's wings would have been equally strong. Looking at Newcastle's left wing, we see Joelinton and Harvey Barnes. On the right, we have Tonali and Almiron. Naturally, the Newcastle coach focused more on the left wing. Let's examine Chelsea's high press through the tactical board. When Newcastle's goalkeeper had the ball, Jackson marked Dan Burn, Palmer marked Shah, Madueke marked Lewis Hall, Lavia marked Bruno Guimaraes, Moises Caicedo marked Joelinton, Pedro Neto marked Tonali, Gusto marked Harvey Barnes, Reece James marked Almiron, and Colwill and Fofana marked Isak. As you can see, they left Livramento unmarked, practically forcing Newcastle to play through him. Despite this, Livramento ended up with the fewest touches among Newcastle's defenders. Of the back 4+1 setup, let's look at their touch counts during build-up. Hall had 78, Burn 75, Shah 70, Bruno Guimaraes 78, and Livramento 55 touches. Clearly, Newcastle consistently preferred the left side. When we display Newcastle's touch map, it becomes evident that they use the left side more. How did Chelsea respond when Newcastle passed to Livramento? Let's take a look. When Livramento received the ball, Neto would quickly close in on him, leaving his mark to Lavia, who would then leave his mark to Jackson. Let's check the 28th minute to see how this tactic was applied. On the screen, you can see Jackson marking Dan Burn, Palmer marking Shah, Madueke marking Lewis Hall, Lavia marking Bruno Guimaraes, Moises Caicedo marking Joelinton, Pedro Neto marking Tonali. Although they are not in the frame, Gusto was marking Harvey Barnes, Reece James marking Almiron, and Colwill and Fofana were on Isak. As you can see, Livramento was left unmarked. Once they passed to him, Pedro Neto quickly pressed him, Lavia took over Tonali, and Jackson marked Bruno Guimaraes. I saw this setup repeatedly throughout the match. Chelsea maintained this high press consistently from start to finish. Lastly, we anticipated both teams might use a lot of long balls. Chelsea, who averages 45 long passes per game, attempted 62 in this match. Newcastle, usually with 44 attempts, tried 56 long balls. There's one player I particularly want to critique here, goalkeeper Sanchez. Out of Chelsea's 62 long balls, Sanchez attempted 24 alone, but only 5 were accurate. Before this match, Sanchez's accuracy for long balls was around 32%, but in this game it dropped to 21%. I haven't seen such a poor statistic in a long time. Looking at the general statistics, both teams had 50% possession. I expected Chelsea to control at least 55% of the ball. In terms of shots, Chelsea had 17, while Newcastle had 11. 7 of Chelsea's 17 shots were on target, compared to 3 out of 11 for Newcastle. Chelsea had 31 touches in the opponent's box, whereas Newcastle had 24. Chelsea made 459 passes during the game, while Newcastle completed 450 passes. The number of passes is nearly identical, but Chelsea made 211 passes in the opposition half, while Newcastle had 134. The key is not the number of passes, but where you make them, and Chelsea was far ahead in this regard. In summary, Chelsea managed to earn 3 well-deserved points against a strong opponent, allowing them to remain among the top teams in the league.